Okay, well, thanks for you guys for having me out here. I really needed to come have a piss up, so. Okay, what I'm going to go through is tandem systems, specifically the segment tandem systems and the operations of that. Myself and Tom travel all over the world doing seminars, educational seminars, explaining our systems. We also have a network of examiners that we use to disseminate information. You guys run your own system, your own tandem program, and it's a great program. You guys have a good safety record, but a lot of the information doesn't filter through to you. So this is an opportunity. We don't have much time. We have 50 minutes, and so we don't have much time, but I'm going to try to put a bit of information that you guys might not have heard about. So if we look first at the design of this tandem, of this student harness, who here jumped the old harness, the old vector harness? That thing was really uncomfortable. A lot of people got sick. So Bill took our harness and he took it to a guy that's specialty, he's a physiologist, and he looked at this and said, how can I make this better for the people? We also wanted to make the student harness a bit like a skydiving rig. So the first thing the guy said, this harness is making people sick because of all the pressure points. It's cutting off circulation in the shoulders, cutting off circulation in the legs, and it leans a person forward, which is an uncomfortable position. So we redesigned the harness. We came up with a really good thing. So this harness worked well for a number of years, and people started getting ejecting out of it. If you fit the harness correctly, there's an echo here. If you fit the harness correctly, nobody should ever fall out of it. So the first thing we did is try and retrain people on how to fit this harness correctly, the way it should be. The next thing we did is we put on a Y strap because people were still not putting the harness out. I guess you guys, I don't know if you saw the video of the old lady that almost fell out. Okay, so that was a poorly fitted harness. The tandem instructor, very heads-up guy, learned to skydive on the Vector 2 tandem system. He was out of the sport for a while, did some retraining with the examiner that was not maybe adequate. He no longer has the examiner rating. And this guy went and took an old lady and purposefully put the harness on loose. When I questioned him, why did you do this? He said, well, it was an old lady and she was frail, I didn't want to hurt her. Well, he almost killed her. The guy actually got a fine from the FAA for $20,000. The FAA doesn't regulate skydiving to that extent. The way they managed to get the fine across, endangering people on the ground. If she fell out the harness, she could have landed on somebody and killed them. Okay, so the new harness done everything that we wanted to do. It puts a person in a good position. It relieves all the pressure points and is comfortable for both the tandem master and passenger. More importantly, the passenger. It can be a little bit uncomfortable for the tandem master if not fitted correctly. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how it should be. The other thing it does, it keeps people's legs up, right? How many people have broken a passenger's leg or injured a leg here? Okay. Most of the time is because the passenger doesn't get their leg up correctly. Okay, so if you put the harness on correctly, it shouldn't be an effort, even for somebody that's not very fit. I need a volunteer. Hank. Me and Hank go back many years, but I haven't seen him for a long time. Okay. Okay, so I've got this harness, it's all loose. What is the best way to use the harness correctly and get everything in the right position? A key part of the harness is having the hip junction in the correct position. So if it's an average sized person, you want it to the side, a smaller person maybe a little bit to the front, and a big person maybe slightly to the back. So the first thing I do then is I look at this guy and I say, okay, I want this in the right position. So I'll take this and I'll put it where I want the hip junction. I'll say, okay, so just hold it there. The next thing I'm going to do it really quickly because I don't have much time, is I want to position the leg junction. Okay, I'm not tucking everything away quickly like it should be, but okay, this is where we see a lot of mistake as well. These straps should be snug and they should be below the belly. They shouldn't. I see a lot of the time people have this strap as a belly band. It's not a belly band, it's a hip strap. The idea is that this goes over the bones of the hip. So no matter how tight you make your passenger on you, this doesn't suck into the stomach or push on the hip bones. Be more comfortable. So just to make sure it stays there, I'm going to do my leg straps now. And a lot of people don't put this away. We've got these nice loops here. So you can put this away and it won't blow out in free fall. And I can show you a video now, just now of what's not. So this, I'm happy with that position. You happy with that? Yeah. Yeah, think it's good? Next thing I want to position the top hooks. Okay. The idea of the top hooks is that it loads the front of the harness and not the back. I see people have it up here and I see people have it all the way down there. Okay, this makes it, the lower you have this, the more uncomfortable you're going to be in there. So our ideal position is when you tighten it, and each person is going to be a bit different, is that you get these hooks right on the top of the shoulder. So to position that in the right position, I should have had Tom doing this while I'm talking. Okay, turn around. Okay, so where do I want the chest strap? Just below the breastbone, there's a perfect position. You don't want it too high, under canopy is going to be under their chin. You have it too low, this becomes very loose. Okay, I'm happy with that harness. This guy's going to stay in, right? Okay. What happens if you have this too far back? That's when you get people not being able to lift up their legs. When you have this too far forward, you know what it's like, guys? You're under canopy and suddenly it feels like you can't breathe because the passenger's right on your chest. Also, if you have it too high, besides the person not being able to lift up their legs, they're going to hang down 2 or 3 feet below you. I've seen it sometimes where a tandem master's standing there, he's got about this much of the passenger's legs below him. We always want the passenger to be able to have the legs up. And maybe a bit, just doesn't take much effort to get it up. Are there any questions on this?
Yeah, like when people are sat on the aircraft, you always see instructors do it. Because they're hunched forward, and they've got a bit of slack there.
And then they start cranking it down. Okay. Okay. If you're confident with the way you set up the harness, and I know you guys you have to hook up before the plane even moves, right? Really uncomfortable, but that's how it is. Well, it works, right? You've never had a passenger leave without the tandem master, right? No, you can. But on some smaller aircraft, it's really difficult. If you have these hooks in the ideal position, it's like in a Cessna, and the person's sitting higher than you when you're trying to hook them up. It's difficult to have it in the right position and still hook your passenger up. It becomes really uncomfortable. So some people, and I do it when I teach the course, I leave a little bit of slack in the front, just so I can hook this back up now. If you turn sideways, you can see. That gives me more than enough time to hook them up. And maybe, do you completely tighten down your passengers before the plane moves?
Just attachment.
What's the rule? Just the attachments, okay. Okay, so, if you have this, especially this one, it's not really adjustable. If you have this hooked up where you want it for jumping, it's also you're going to have the passenger on you the whole time. It might be a bit uncomfortable. So when I teach people, I say you can leave a little bit of slack in this, as long as it's still in a jumpable condition. So in other words, if I have to leave the aircraft because of emergency, I want my passenger falling out. So I'll have a little bit of slack, and then once I've hooked them up, I'll tighten it down a bit. But you see sometimes people see slack in the harness, they get all panicky and they start cranking, and then the passenger's like this. They can't move in free fall. Another key thing about having this in the right position, who's had a side spin? Okay. One of the dynamics of the side spin, when you see it, is the passenger being able to get away from the tandem master. If you see what's really common in every side spin video I've seen, is that the passenger's legs are forward and there's a gap between them. So you really want to, and when you have this low down, if you tighten this all the way down, the passenger can't move. Once he's attached to you, if you arch, he's going to arch. You won't have a side spin. If you look at the other tandem harnesses, this connection point is not right here in the junction. It's a little bit higher. And that's why it's more common in some of the other systems. I won't mention them. We know who they are. That's it. Any more questions on this?
What about the chest strap, the larger breasted lady?
Where would I put it? I would put it lower down. I mean, having it over the top, sometimes people say it's a good thing, but it's going to be under the chin. So take it lower down. Even if I have this all the way down, this can't fall off their shoulder. You know, I can do that, but it's not. Once you're hooked up, it can't fall off their shoulder. So you can get this pretty low down and still have them safely in the harness, unless they've got no arms. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's about it. Talking about people not putting tightening the straps away. I'll have a video, and now I've got to get out of anything and do this. Sorry. Wrong side. Which one is it, Tom? Oh, wait, I got it. Yeah, okay. That's my wife and kids. Was it not? Okay, so this was a guy, and we'll see it when he gets in the door. Have you got your laser pointer? My laser pointer, you lost it? Okay, besides it, this guy didn't deploy the drogue in the right position. Look at that passenger. He's all over the place. None of the straps are away. You can see the side straps. Okay, that's the leg strap here. All that this guy did was, once he tightened the passenger harness down, he just tucked them into the elastic keepers, right? So we carry on in free fall. Okay. You know how those pieces of hardware work. The way to loosen a piece of hardware is that you pull it back, right? And then there's no slack. So what's this guy as he goes on? The wind's actually doing that for him. See how that buckle's lifting up? Okay, when we started out, there was about that much excess webbing. Now we look down to it, there's about 3 or 4 inches left. And coming to pull time, so it's not clear with all this light. Coming to pull time, oh shit, where did it go? So now at pull time, that's all the way to the stops. Just because he didn't utilize the equipment the way it was designed. Oh, did I miss it, Tom? There you go. Look at that. Good thing we put dead ends on the webbing. At that point, the Y strap's not doing anything. I mean, she could easily have slipped out of that harness. Okay, now, sorry? Tom, what did we do with this guy?
We suspended him and pending a retraining with a different examiner. 30 days down and then a retraining.
Okay, I'm going to move off to the next system. Well, actually, no. Okay. Okay, harness and container system. Do you guys know the history of the Sigma? Okay, so just a little bit of history of why the Sigma came about. When the first tandem systems were produced by Ted Strong and by Bill Booth, it was only the top skydivers, and it was new to everybody. So people paid attention about how we developed these systems, and we learned through trial and error, through fatalities, through injuries, through malfunctions on the systems. I mean, it was a steep learning curve, and then we got to a plateau on the Vector 2 system. We said this system is the best it could be, right? And then we started noticing a trend. Okay, as more people became tandem masters, we started seeing the fatality rate went from the inexperienced guy with 200 or 300 tandems to people with thousands of tandems. And we said, we've got to look at overall tandem jumping and see what is the problem. So we went to the federation that keeps the best records, which is the APF, so the Australian Parachute Federation. They keep records on everything, whether it's a cutaway, an injury, unusual opening. They keep immaculate records. And it's for a country that drinks so much beer, I don't know how that happened, but it did. So we went and we looked at their malfunctions and their problems for the last 5 years. And we one step at a time, we started with the first one, which was the out-of-sequence deployment. We created the DIS system. And one step at a time, till the last thing that we put onto the Sigma system was the Skyhook RSL. The Skyhook RSL was originally designed for tandem. We didn't even think it had a market in the sport. In sport solo jumping. But our test jumpers liked it so much, they said, I want it on my rig. And that's how it got there. But so everything on this rig has been done because of a specific reason. From hard cutaways, we redesigned the 3-ring system in '98 to the out-of-sequence deployments, to people cutting away and tumbling through their reserve lines. There were 2 fatalities because of that, and that's where the Skyhook RSL came about. And obviously, the answer to any mathematical problem is Sigma, right? It's a solution, and that's how the name came about. So even the name. Okay, what's the trends we've seen out in the field? The biggest thing we see that's a problem is the flip through. The flip through. You guys all know what a flip through is. And that comes from a really one basic thing. Doing the same thing every time you make a tandem jump. When you do your gear inspection, have a logical order that you do on every jump. I've got 6, you guys, I'm sure there's a lot more experienced people than me now. When I got to 6,500 tandems, I thought I was really experienced, but now people have 10, 15, 20,000 tandems. I think 22,000 tandems is the highest, right, that we have out there. There's a guy with 22,000 tandems. Incredible, eh? So I'm now not that experienced anymore, but I do get a lot of this information. So having a system for everything you do, whether it's from the beginning, from briefing your passenger, putting on your harness, doing your gear inspection, to exiting the aircraft and everything. I do the same thing. I've never changed. A guy taught me in DeLand, Mad Dog. You must probably all, if you've been to DeLand, you've met him. And he taught me this when I became a tandem master in '92. And I've done exactly the same thing ever. I've never had a problem. The other thing I see very common out there is people not adjusting the main lift web. Okay, because it's an adjustable main lift web, it does have harness hardware, right? And if you jump with that harness in the same position, jump after jump after jump, that tends to wear that specific point on the main lift web. So it is a good idea when you pick up a rig and you haven't jumped that rig before, is adjust it to your size. It also is going to help you on a lot of things. If you have the harness incorrectly adjusted, it's going to make your canopy flying more duff, because now the riser, if you have a long harness, your hands are higher, you get tired, it affects the way you flare. if it's too short, it's uncomfortable, and your passenger sits way too low, sits too far below you. So have a comfortable harness the way you like it. It's still snug, and do it every time. I'm not going to go too much. Stuff that's new on there. Question we also get is the Spectra ripcord. Okay, so we had a service bulletin on the Spectra ripcord. If you're any riggers, you know about that. The coating that we used to stiffen it up a bit changed. But I get a lot of questions on how much wear can you have on this recoil ripcord. Okay, because it's coated blue. Spectra you can't dye Spectra. It's white, and we get it coated for us so we can identify it as the right stuff in the shop, so we don't use the wrong strength Spectra. This stuff does wear off. Even this one that's a fairly new one, you'll see there's some white spots. This turning to white doesn't matter. If it's frayed a little bit, it doesn't matter. We don't see a lot of fraying, but this thing exceeds the strength of a metal ripcord. Okay. It takes, I think we're busy in the process now of putting something on our website on how many fibers we can cut till this degrades to a state that is not safe anymore. But if you see a little bit of light fraying, you see a little bit of fibers, that's fine. When you start seeing clumps of fibers broken, that's an indication that this should not be used. I've never seen one in the field yet. I mean, we had some military guys that came on military equipment, and they had a whole group of fibers. I don't know what you call them, but that was broken. And we tested it, it still exceeded, it went up to 450 pounds. That should be enough to move a pin. Other service bulletins that we've had on this, and I think that stuff does translate through to you through the FAA and the joint agreement we have with other aviation authorities, was the split RSL, and I think all the systems that you guys have should have that. Are there any questions about service bulletins or operation on the rig itself? You guys happy with the rig? Can we do anything better?
On the old vector system, we used to have the crystal ball.
Yeah.
The RSL. Why did you get rid of that and go to the little tab?
Okay, so we've never had a crystal ball activation as a lifesaver. We did have one in a military situation, but that was with, I don't even know, bundle jumping. The guy went out and got the bundle wrapped around and deployed the drogue, and it trapped his arm, and he used it. But the only other case we have of somebody using the crystal ball was slow-mo. And if you guys have been in the industry, you know who slow-mo is, right? Okay. Does anybody not know slow-mo? He doesn't. Okay, so he used the crystal ball as an examiner because he didn't have chicken handles to deploy. The guy didn't release the drogue, so he deployed the reserve using the crystal ball. And that's the only real-life case that we got ever reported to us.
Going on from that, not necessarily using the crystal ball to deploy the reserve, but the crystal ball is an easy ground to disconnect the RSL.
Okay.
If you need to.
Yeah.
Rather than the little things that we have. The Next had a nice little loop going on that one that I always thought was a good idea to release the RSL.
Yeah. And the question that I didn't answer is why did we remove it? Okay, that was our logic where we thought we could remove it. The reason we didn't want to remove it, when we put the Skyhook on, it was going to have to change people's procedures if they were going to ever use that to deploy the reserve. Okay, so if you use the crystal ball and you use it the way we CT, you grab it and you pull all the way forward, right? So if you do that, you're dragging the Skyhook past your head. Okay, now if you have that Skyhook lanyard coming, if you're wearing a helmet, we were worried about it snagging on something. So instead of trying to retrain everybody, we just said, nobody's used it, and you can still use it if you want to in case of emergency. It's still possible to use the crystal ball. You know, you just get your thumb underneath the RSL and you can slide it up and release it.
Generally, the tab on the RSL is pretty small, so in high
Yeah.
situations, it's a lot more difficult to grab it.
Yeah.
Disconnect it routinely. Like on the next system, there's a loop, which is just get your thumb through and disconnect
Yeah.
it. With that, the tab is pretty small.
And I'll take that into consideration on the Sigma 2. Okay. So what's your name, sir? Chappie mod.
But the other beauty of that as well is it makes it much more identifiable if that's disconnected.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier on about the fact that we disconnect it in high winds.
Yeah.
So when they do the gear check, if it's got that robust item there, it's much more
Yeah.
visible.
It's flapping about and it's not on display.
Yeah. I think the next system has a snap on it too, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. We actually do something on our similar on our military systems. It's a long tab with a snap on the riser. And we won't charge too much more for that. So all the DZOs here, it's his fault when the price goes up. Okay, let's look at the Drogue system. Our Drogue is manufactured and tested at sea level. The reason for that is we live in the land. The Drogue is not a put it on and forget it thing. It really does need maintenance. And where we see 80% of malfunctions that we see out there, you can directly attribute to the Drogue. It's really an issue. So a Drogue inspection is pretty important. Now we also have in our manual, our new manual when it comes out, we have a 25 jump inspection where every 25 jumps, you should, instead of just packing the rig, you should do a bit more of an extensive pack job and inspect every component of the rig, every system within the rig. You guys were in Tom's talk just now when he talked about Taupo and their success rate and their lack of malfunctions. They have that. That's where we got this 25 jump inspection from. I can't remember, and I think it was 25 jumps, but at Taupo, who's worked at Taupo? Yeah. Okay, so you guys know what happened. You jump the rig, and suddenly that rig gets put to the side and takes a little bit more time. So I spoke to the owner of the drop zone who runs aircraft, right? That's his other business. And he said, I approach tandem jumping the same way I approach my aircraft. An aircraft has a 100-hour inspection. I determined, looking at all the stuff, that if I do the same thing, I'm going to have the same kind of problems as my aircraft, which is zero till recently, right? He didn't just sink one. But I mean, he's got a pretty good track record, and that's what they do. Every so many jumps, that rig gets taken down, and they do a full inspection. If there's anything wrong, it gets put to the side and not used. And that's the reason they have such a low malfunction rate, because the equipment is well maintained and well inspected. Okay. Just having your rig a packet every, 6 months here is not enough. I mean, it doesn't catch the little things that cause problems. And one of the biggest things is a Drogue. So a Drogue's designed to get the bag to line stretch in about 0.7 of a second. That's less than a second. If it takes longer than that, what's going to happen? The bag lifts for speeds are a lot slower. You'll see, if you guys have all seen it on video, that when you have these long trapdoors, you say, like, what happened? Look at the video, and you see the bag starts doing this. And as it does that, clumps of lime fall off instead of them coming off neatly. So that leads to tension knots. It also allows the lines to sail out during the deployment. Sometimes you'll see the bag here, and you'll see lines blowing past beyond the bag, which that can create some serious problems. The other thing it does, you're accelerating now. The faster you go, the harder and more chaotic your openings are going to be. So if we can keep the speed low down by getting that to the line stretch at 0.7 of a second, and as a tandem master, that's 1,000. I should be starting to be pulled up. When you notice that it's taken more than that, so more than a second, we say 0.7 of a second to 1 second. 1 second is starting to get toward the top end of the time we want it to take. So you pull that Drogue release, and you feel that long trapdoor like this, and before you get him pulled up. If it's taking more than a second, the Drogue needs to be calibrated. And if I don't know how your work at your drop zone, but you go to the packers and you say this Drogue is taking too long to open. And it's not just one jump, because one jump can happen, but it's normally over a few jumps. Do you guys know how to calibrate a Drogue? Okay, so when this Drogue comes from the factory, and we set this at about, this is the stop tape of the central line, where the central line attached. We set that at 1.5 inches, I'm confused here. 1.5 inches from the grommet to the end of the stop tape. Okay, that is perfect when this Drogue is new, and when F111 comes out, it's 0 to 3 CFM. It used to be 3 CFM up to 7 CFM, but now it's about 3 CFM, cubic feet per minute. So the easiest way to calibrate a Drogue on the fly at a drop zone is, and that's on our website, I think. It is on our website under the rigging section, is to just, every drop zone has used slinks lying around. So when you feel that this Drogue is taking too long to open, all you have to do is disconnect this from the bag, pull the kill line out, if I can get it. And I can't get it this morning. I don't have my glasses on. Okay, take a slink, attach a slink with the tab to the end, not on this end, and reconnect it. That gives you exactly 4 inches. So now your gap from your stop tape to the grommet goes to about 5.5 inches. That should, now the Drogue doesn't collapse all the way. So when it's collapsed all the way, this one's not collapsed all the way, we have about 2 inches of overlap to the mesh. We want this Drogue to behave like a 33-inch pilot chute, and at that stage, when it's new, it does. It creates about the same amount of drag as a 33-inch pilot chute. When you take it to 5 inches, now we have about, 5-6 inches of overlap there. This is going to grab a lot more air, and your bag's going to get all the way out there. And it's also only the initial snatch that we need. If you'll see, getting the bag the first 6 or 7 feet, this Drogue doesn't really collapse all the way. And that's what we want to do. We want to get the inertia gain. We want to launch that bag off. The other thing is this is too short. These kill lines, if somebody put the wrong kill line, you're going to start feeling, when you pull that Drogue release and you're sitting upright, you don't like that. That creates canopy damage, and that can also hurt you. So too short is not great. The ideal is 7/10 of a second, and you can time it. If you've got a video, you can go frames if you know how many frames per second they're using. So from 7/10 of a second to 1 second. Do you guys, any of you still have the black material on your Drogues? Yeah. Yeah. So that was a good experiment. It worked really well when we got a certain quality of material. We started producing them. They worked out well. We were so happy with it. It saved us on material costs. We couldn't get Kevlar, and that was another thing. We lost our Kevlar supplier. Well, the supplier that could make us decent Kevlar, so we went to that. And it was really great for a while. Then the quality of the webbing changed, and we couldn't get the same quality. But we didn't know till we had a few of these Drogues out in the field what was happening. That was melting. And it was just the composition of the nylon they used. Once it started melting from the Drogue collapsing, it started eating up the center lines. So if you still have them, if you have some of the early ones, they actually work great, but some of the later ones were not great. But you can rework those Drogues and put a lower Kevlar section on if you have the one piece. And that's the one piece ones were the ones that lasted well. It was the ones that were detachable that wasn't too great. Any questions on the Drogue system? Any experiences out there, good or bad? No? Doing great. Next thing. The main canopy. The only thing I'm going to discuss with the main canopy, we have our main canopies. I know there's 50 different tandem mains out there. One thing on our main canopy, we've all gone to Vectran. You can still get Dacron lines if you want Dacron lines. Some of the high altitude drop zones do want Dacron lines because they have harder openings up there. But one thing we have seen with the new canopies, with the new line configuration, you don't have the secondary stow on the control lines. The reason for that is because with the Vectran, we were concerned about hard openings. Okay, we didn't want to hurt anybody, and because they're no stretch lines, we stopped stowing the flare control lines, the secondary toggles. But it has created another issue. Okay, if do you guys all? Yeah, sorry. Well, burns, I'll address that next. Okay, so yeah, the thing is you have these long lines that go the whole way down there. And I guess you guys all ProPack, right? Okay, so when you lay the canopy out, those lines really stretch out. And we've seen a higher incidence of line overs. Now on the Sigma canopy, line overs tend not to be a problem, but they do, as you say, burn the canopy. So we just had one we looked at the Air Force Academy in Colorado, and they said, what happened with this opening? We see so many, people don't even realize, most of the time you don't even know you have a line over. Because they're elliptical canopies, 9 out of 10 times with the line over, they're clear. Yeah. So there's two solutions to that. Once you lay the canopy out, the first thing that happens is those lines stretch out all the way. They fan out inside that pack job. If you leave it like that, it's going to do two things. It can lead to a line over malfunction. The other thing it does is when that canopy aligns itself, it creates sack in the line that gets taken out when the canopy starts loading, and that causes burn. So once the canopy is laid out, make sure that those lines are put back into the center. The other thing you can do, and it is approved, is you can put an elastic band, put a stow, your riggers can put stows on the slider, and you can put an elastic band to control those lines, keep them in the center of the pack job. And that's it. Any questions on the main canopy? I don't know, who uses Sigma mains here? Go Skydive did. They thank you so much for 20 canopies from it.
The burns on the sliders, because we try to collapse them all the time, but
Yeah.
we still get burns on the sliders.
Okay. Part of the reason for the burn on the sliders is the dome slider. Do you have the new canopies? Yeah. The thing there is also make sure that the slider gets split properly and that those lines are controlled. You'll see that if you have an older Sigma, you have the dome slider, which we've moved away from. Because the dome slider, the burns were happening under canopy. But if you're having burns now on the new slider, which is the flat slider, it's probably within that pack job. Make sure that those control lines are taken care of. And as I said, if you're getting it a lot, either address it with your packers, or packers are great. Address it with your packers, and if you feel that these guys aren't capable of doing that, then maybe put the little stow on the slider. Any other questions? Any problems? Oh, another thing with the Vectran lines, that slider moves really fast, and that stainless steel does get eaten up. Always check on the inside of the grommets every now and again when you're checking the canopies that maybe at the end of the day jumping, that it hasn't eaten through that stainless steel. Because once it does, within about 20 to 25 jumps, those lines are going to break. Because what happens, it eats through, now creates a sharp edge, and it starts tearing up the lines every time you open. You'll also see on the lines now, you guys, I think all your canopies have the Teflon sleeve. Okay, the older canopies, who has canopies that doesn't have the Teflon sleeve with Vectran? You all do, okay. If you don't have that, you can get that at no charge. We supply that at no, we don't charge you for it, just pay shipping, and you can replace those lines free of charge. Okay, reserve system. Okay, Tom's discussed emergency procedures, but one thing that's now become a BSR, do you guys know what a BSR is? It's a basic safety regulation for USPA. It's now, handles checks have now become a BSR. Even though we as a manufacturer mandated it, people were not doing it. But a lot of times we see that people are not doing handles checks. You need to know that those handles are in place and you're able to pull them. You need to know where they are. We've seen so many incidents where we look at an incident, a guy gets into trouble, he's never done a handle check. Tom showed you one where people were, I had a case sent to me that a guy said our system failed to work. If it wasn't for the AAD, I would be dead because I pulled the reserve handle and nothing happened. So he sent me his hand cam video to emphasize the point. And on the hand cam video, when you look at it fast, it's just all, like most hand cam videos during malfunctions, it's just all over the place. You can't see anything, but then I showed it frame for frame. And he was constantly pulling on his own main lift web, and nothing happened. As the reserve deployed and he started getting upright, that was the first time he looked down and he pulled the reserve handle. But he said, I pulled it, and nothing happened, and the AAD saved my life. Okay. So handle checks important. Cutaway, having a procedure for cutaway, even though we have Skyhook, Skyhook is not 100% system. You guys all know that. The Skyhook doesn't work 100% of the time. It's designed to disconnect as well as pull the reserve out. So if there's any kind of conflict for whatever reason, because of that fact that it can disconnect and will disconnect, about 4% of all Skyhook deployments do disconnect. It does help by getting the reserve pilot chute out there. So spinning malfunctions, I see a lot of the time people try to stabilize spinning malfunctions and then let go of the toggles and cut away. And what that does, it really, first of all, if you're trying to control, well, you can't control this thing that you can't see. Now you say, okay, I'm stable, I'm going to let it go and cut away as quickly as I can. What does that canopy do? It immediately starts to dive, and as you're cutting away, you put so much slack in the system that it increases the chances of a disconnect. So if you're having a malfunction, let it ride. This thing's not, you try to clear, it won't clear. Let it ride. It's going to be, the more pressure on the system, the better it works. So if you're in a spinning malfunction, it really works well. Who's had a Sky save on it? They're cool, man. I love them. I do. I think, okay. And I've never had a real one. All of mine have been test jumps. Yes. Yeah.
The concern was with regards to, does this ever happen with a standard RSL, or is it only unique to Skydivers?
No, it's more a result of our reserve canopy. Our reserve canopy on opening doesn't go anywhere. It's in a deep brake setting. So it could be, that was flipping the coin. It could happen on any time, and I've heard of 1 or 2 incidents that it's hit. But this is the first one I've heard of entanglement, that it actually created a problem. So no, it's not a result of the skyhook. Yeah, there is a bit more distance if you don't have the skyhook between the bag lock malfunction. And normally with the bag lock malfunction, the reserve pilot chute is actually doing the deployment. You know, the skyhook will initiate it, and then that reserve pilot chute will come out, and it will overtake the bag lock malfunction most of the time. With a Drogue out there, maybe not, but most of the time it does. So that bag lock's always going to be, even if you have a standard RSL, it's going to be close to you. Even if you didn't have an RSL, there's a possibility of that happening. It's just 2 things in the sky at the same time in close proximity. Eventually, they're going to hit each other. Okay, any more questions on that? Okay, hand cam. Who wasn't at Tom's talk? One guy. So I'll just say, don't change your procedures of the way you fly because you have a hand cam. It has created problems. Well, we saw it create one problem after many years, and now it's creating more of a problem. We've seen it happen twice now. The people are focusing on being a videographer and not being a tandem instructor. So make sure that nothing changes in your procedures. When you cut away, especially from high-speed malfunctions, that camera becomes a non-issue. Actually, we did see one. The other thing we had is people jumping with 2 GoPros. Okay, a guy tried to reach his reserve handle, he couldn't. So when he went to cut away, he had those 2 GoPros to do the 3D shit. Like it's not enough, right? And he went, and the passenger was like this, and he couldn't get to the reserve handle. And he actually, he had tried it. He used to do handles checks. But with a passenger like this, it was easy. But as soon as the passenger was like this, looking what's going on, he couldn't get to his reserve handle. Luckily, the RSL worked, but he did speak to me about it. So he's gone to a single thing on a pole with a rake on the end and 6 GoPros. That's the new one we're going to design. Or Go poles or whatever they're called, are they allowed in the UK? No, okay, good. Yeah, actually in the US for hand cam now, the requirement is 200 tandem jumps before you can even jump with the hand cam on a tandem. How's it, how many here? 500. And that's a good, I mean, it is creating problems. It has. I mean, we see it. And I mean, the Australians started this whole crap, right? They started with these hand cams. And now we got to deal with the fallout. Okay. Oh, did I? Sorry. Okay, landings. I missed it. Okay, BSRs on the landing is no turns greater than 90 degrees below 200 feet. 500 feet, sorry. Yeah. Stabilized approach by 200 feet. Yeah. So no turns greater than 90 degrees. Talking on that, none of the canopies that you guys jump were designed to be landed only in a hook turn configuration, right? I don't know of any manufacturer, and I see test jumping, I see 3 canopy manufacturers in the landing test jump. I've never seen any of them, besides the canopies that are designed for CP flying, that this is a criteria for a tandem canopy. So there's 3 tandem canopy manufacturers in the land, so more specific. Well, manufacturers that do produce them. They don't necessarily produce them in the land. And I don't see any of them doing hook turns to test their canopy to make sure it works right. Okay, they weren't designed that way. The only reason you do a hook turn is for who? To make it more exciting for the passenger? This is the most exciting thing they've ever done in their life. Besides that was watching football on a Saturday night. So that it adds nothing to the experience and adds a whole lot of danger. And the only reason you're doing a hook turn is for yourself, when you need to be honest about it. So yes, so the BSR, no turns greater than 90 degrees below 500 feet. And we've had how many fatalities from low turns now? 3, 4? 5 people have died. Yeah. And you know what? I think, I know some of the best swoopers in the world because they live in the land, they train in the land. Every one of them has had a bad landing. But unfortunately for them, it only involved themselves. Every time you do a bad landing on a tandem, it involves somebody else that you could ruin their life forever. No. Yeah.
So, at the beginning of the presentation, Mark went over the proper passenger harness fitting. Oh, you still wearing false? Can you arch for me? Arch? Pepsi? Holy shit, this is loose. I'm going to fix it. Hold on. Have you guys seen this before? Say no, you're lying. Say that for me. Can you arch for me? Not easy, it's harder. You're more inclined to be de-arched with it like this. But the big issue is when you brought the shoulder hooks this far forward now by giving this massive tightening of the harness, the difficulty of picking up the legs increases exponentially the further forward this gets pulled down. Right now with incidents with broken ankles, landing injuries, this is the reason for it. Take another hour to explain why, but since we don't have an hour, I'm going to ask you to just trust me on that. The passengers have to be able to pick their legs up. They have to be able to have movement in the harness. It's instinct. It's instinct to want to, it's loose, tighten this down because it doesn't look right. But it makes the end of the skydive so much harder for them to be able to pick their legs up if their back is curved forward. So I would ask you guys to trust what Mark has presented. You stand back up again. The properly fitted harness, even though it might appear to have movement in the aircraft, the 2 places he needs this is on exit to be able to arch. If he can arch better, your exits will be easier. You'll work less hard. And on landing, they'll have an easier time picking up their legs. So I just wanted to make sure. Jeff asked us to cover that with you guys.
Okay, and the last thing, I've run out of time. Not that anybody else cares. Yeah, sorry, yeah? Okay, all you want to do with the Y mod is take the tension out of the system. Okay, don't tighten it down. Because what you're doing, when you're tightening it down, you're putting tension on. It's designed not to have tension so they can still move. If you start cranking it down, then they're not going to be able to lift their legs up. One thing you also want to watch with the Y strap. Okay. So for this one, I'm just going to take the tension, and that's all you need to do, nothing more. You then still have all this travel. Okay. And also, if you tighten it too much, this starts sliding up. Okay, and then that also stops them from lifting their legs up. So you want to have that sort of down between the legs and just release, take the slack out of the system, and that's good, nothing more. Okay. Good thing we left that. In closing, you guys know the difference between ignorance and complacency, right? One is I don't know and I don't care. Every problem we've seen on tandem jumping boils down to those things. Either the person didn't know what they were doing or didn't care what they were doing. Okay. Ignorance we can sort out, right? Through this kind of thing, training, peer pressure, we can sort out ignorance. Complacency is our biggest killer in the sport. Okay. And the biggest roadblock to getting over complacency is ego. Don't have an ego on the drop zone. You might be the best there, but what you being the best gives you an opportunity to train the people that aren't the best. Okay. If you don't know something, ask. If you know something that you can pass on to this person, do it. But when you get to complacency, there's nothing we can do about it. And the biggest thing is the ego. So when you see people out there, please do something about it. Tandem jumping is a livelihood and makes your bosses and yourselves a significant amount of money. Well, maybe not so much as a tandem boss. It depends where you work. Don't work for Lodi. But I mean, tandem jumping has changed our sport significantly. Even in the US, the majority of drop zones had Cessnas and still have Cessnas. But as soon as tandem jumping came across, it put a lot of cash into our sport that even small drop zones now can afford to have decent student equipment, decent facilities, decent aircraft, and it's all directly attributed to the amount of income that operations get from tandem jumping. So if you look after tandem jumping, you're not only looking after your own livelihood, your boss's livelihood, so you can keep on offering your job, you're looking after our sport. So don't be a dumbass. And thank you.